Was out with my son today, walking in the woods near our house, and we came across like this big pond that had a tree that had fallen over, and it was kind of hanging over the pond. So like the base of the tree, like the roots, the strong part was right at the shore of the pond, and then it was kind of hanging at an angle. So you could climb up it, and as you climbed up, you would kind of go higher up over the water. And my son's 7, and he's typically not the most. He's not the class daredevil, seemingly. He tends to be more cautious and hesitant when it comes to things like that, like taking those types of chances, those types of risks, really stepping outside of his comfort zone, right? He seems like, when it comes to like social settings, he's very outgoing. So it seems like somebody who's not bashful, who's not shy, who's not afraid of things. But it really is, as it does with all people, it comes down to what's your natural comfort zone. And for him, when it comes to physical things like that and true fears like heights and climbing over the water and things where you can get hurt, that's outside of his comfort zone. So this particular situation was interesting because he seems to be of late, and maybe it's through some conversations we're having or something around what I'm talking about in these videos and trying to embody, but maybe it's just him. But he seems to be trying to embrace those challenges more, right? We've had a few similar instances where he sees things like that, he wants to try and do it, almost as if he knows it's something that's holding him back, kind of, right? There's some hurdle for him to get over, or maybe I'm projecting onto that on him. Maybe he's just a 7-year-old who saw a cool tree and wanted to climb it. But whatever it was, in this instance, it was interesting how I approached it, right, and trying to be really aware of it, because as he went over to the tree and kind of started to indicate that he might want to climb it, my first gut reaction was like, no effing way. It's zero chance you're climbing that tree. It's not even a question. It's not even a thought. You're just not doing it. But naturally, the way I try and think now, that doesn't work for me. I need to understand for myself what's the next why, right? What's behind that? What's the math? What's the logic? And as I started running through that, there were some real risks to it. There were some real costs to doing that. If he had fallen, he could get hurt. I don't know how deep the water is. I don't know how clean the water is. If he falls into the water, do I have to jump in and save him? We're about a mile or so away from the car. It's going to be a miserable walk back. There's all sorts of things that could happen, ranging in seriousness, but that were bad. And the benefit, although a cool experience and all that, it's just too risky. It's not. There's no safety net around it. There was nothing where I could feel like the odds were in our favor, where it'll likely go fine. More likely than not, it will be fine. There was real risk in it. Not life or death risk per se, although I guess there's always an element of that, but just risk. Just risk. It was uncomfortable. It was an unnatural thing, and in my mind, it was you just don't do it. But as I started to break it down, I started to think about, again, most likely scenario here is he just gets wet and we have to walk back to the car and it's kind of an inconvenience. But what I recognized is that in my calculation, I was doing what I often do, and maybe many of us often do. I was missing a piece of it. I was missing, depending on how you look at it, a potential cost or a benefit that really ties to the whole concept of regret minimization, right? And what I was doing in that calculation was regret minimization in the very short term. Like, we're walking in the woods right now, everything's going relatively smoothly, it's pretty safe, pretty stable environment. You want to now introduce this new situation, which introduces all sorts of variability and risk. It takes this nice, simple, straightforward walk and makes it potentially something else. And I want to minimize that regret around that. I don't want to have to, carry you back to the car soaking wet, or have to jump in and save you from it, or have to hear you whine and complain, or whatever. Maybe you break your leg, right? All these different things that even the more immediate short-term stuff is just annoying, which is okay, right? There's value in trying to minimize that regret and some of those risks. But what I wasn't accounting for was the bigger picture regret minimization and what that type of experience represents. And as I started thinking it through my lens, it becomes symbolic to an extent. This idea of there's something that you want, there's some reward, there's some benefit, some hurdle that you want to get over, some challenge that you want to defeat. But there's risk, there's real risk in it. Real, in some cases, difficult to quantify exactly how risky it is, an uncertain situation that breaks away from stability and safety that you have. And my inclination in those situations is you don't take the risk, you almost don't even think about it. It's just not in the realm of reality. And what does that cost you throughout life, right? When you start to develop that mindset, in some ways, maybe even subconsciously, or at least somewhat subconsciously, how many times, how many instances in life do you run into situations like that where you don't even consider it? You don't take that risk, you don't take that chance, you sacrifice that reward, you sacrifice that potential benefit because it's too murky, it's too unknown. And then when you start thinking of it in terms of, well, now I'm in these subtle ways, or perhaps this case not so subtle, projecting this and putting this onto my son. He's got this inclination that he wants to take on this challenge, right? He's doing his own calculation in his head, and for whatever reason, he says, I want to try this. I want to do this. And by me shutting it down and saying, no, absolutely not, we don't think that way, how many instances will he run into in his life where he takes that, okay, that's how we do it. We don't take really unknown chances like that. We minimize risk. We focus on the short term. We don't think about the long-term rewards and benefits. We don't think about, why it's good to take chances sometimes. That's not how we think. And is that what I want to teach him? And is this an opportunity to maybe break that cycle and show him that you go for it? If it's something that you want, you go for it. And you understand the consequences. You understand the risks. And if, it happens that you do fall, you're going to get messy. It's going to be difficult for a little while. But we get up and you clean up and you keep going. This is an opportunity to teach that. And what about the regret minimization of losing that lesson and perhaps not having that muscle exercised enough to carry on later in life, and apply that confidence and apply that resiliency and apply that ability to say, hey, I don't know what's going to happen here. It's uncertain. I'm uncomfortable. I'm scared, but there's something I want to achieve and I'm going to go for it. And I started to realize that I need to seek out more of these opportunities and be much more thoughtful, not force it, right? Not put him in unnecessary risks, but be thoughtful about the lessons he's being taught implicitly and explicitly. Be very thoughtful about what I'm minimizing risk for in the short term versus long term, his health and well-being versus his happiness, his confidence, and ability to really thrive later on in life.